An enraged man called Gikatoe roamed the village of Abati to complain about his wife to everyone who cared to listen. She was 31-year-old Eshetu. The list of complaints was long, simply inexhaustible. Yes, Eshetu had given him only a son, while most of her mates had given birth to many sons and daughters. Eshetu spent most of the day cooking. Her breakfast ran into lunch, and her lunch ran into supper. For her part, never complained about her husband. She considered everything he did perfect. Because of her passive attitude towards Gikatoe, he believed he was a perfect husband. Nevertheless, Gikatoe was unhappy. He came home late every night, gambling all he earned during the day. Yet when he came home, Eshetu would rise from her bed, heat his food, and give him hot water to take his bath. She would sit, watch him eat, cautioning him to eat slowly while she looked out for tiny bones in his food. After eating, he would ask, "What did you do today?" Eshetu would itemize all she did that day. "I swept the compound and prepared breakfast for our son. I washed and dressed him for school before going to the farm to get the grass to feed the animals." "How many chickens are there now?" Gikatoe asked scornfully. "We have 200 birds," Eshetu said. 200 birds after 3 years, the man exclaimed. "This is a total waste of valuable time. My husband, I have done my utmost, yet the birds are not reproducing. I give them the required nutrition, care, and medication, yet they remain stunted," Eshetu cried. Gikatoe shook his head and tossed the food aside. "What? My husband? Are you angry with me because the chickens refuse to grow?" Eshetu asked. "No, it is not about the chickens. It is about your stubbornness. Look at your friends, Keba, Jeba, and Matu. Haven't you noticed how their businesses have flourished? Don't you have eyes to see the smiles on their faces and the pride in the eyes of their husbands? Is it difficult to see these women are giving birth like rabbits?" Gikatoe lamented. "What has that to do with me, you, or our family? Everyone must find what brings him happiness. Mine is to take care of you and our child." "That is not enough, woman," Gikatoe snapped. "You must go into business like real women. I can assure you nothing will please me more." Eshetu remained adamant she would not go into the kind of business her husband intended. They argued like they'd done months before. When Gikatoe had had enough of what he considered his wife's stubbornness and disobedience, he decided to marry a second wife, who he hoped would do all the things his wife Eshetu failed to do. He told Uncle Madah his plans. "My nephew," Madah said, alarmed. "Why would you contemplate such evil against a woman who had never lifted her voice against you? All she does day and night is sing your praise and follow your every command." Gikatoe then went into the story of their marriage. Painting his wife with broad and careless strokes, he enumerated her faults beyond anything Uncle Madah had remotely imagined. "My nephew," Madah said, his voice troubled and breaking. "I did not know you lived in such an unhappy marriage. I admit I was wrong, because I had always believed a wife would be the first to bear the signs and scars of a flagging marriage. I did not see any of those signs in the eyes of Eshetu. She brimmed with joy every time we met, so I wrongly believed all was well. Yes, I have lived in hell all these 12 years with this woman. I shall find a woman who will give me the comfort I always desired and deserved." Gikatoe stepped out of the room, but Uncle Madah stopped him at the door. "My nephew, let me advise you before you embark on this new adventure. Perhaps this will help you make a better decision." Gikatoe returned and sat before his uncle, his eyes fixed on him and his ears picking up every sound like an antenna. "I have been married for more than 40 years to the same woman. There have been many ups and downs in this marriage. I thank our ancestors. My wife and children are alive and doing well." Uncle Madah paused. "Do you know why I sound positive about my marriage that has probably had more downs than oops?" Uncle Madah asked, staring his nephew between the eyes. Gikatoe shook his head. "No, tell me." "Can you guess?" Madah asked. "Your wife Musu is a hard-working woman. She listens to you and has given you many sons and daughters." Madah shook his head, his eyes watery. "You are wrong, my nephew. Musu is not the hard worker you envisioned her to be. She is the most headstrong woman I have ever encountered in my life. Her stubbornness surpasses that of my mother and the 3 wives of my late father combined. Lastly, Musu has never had a child of her own. All the many children in our home were adopted. We do not tell people these things, because it is nobody's business." Gikatoe was silent for a long time. He swallowed hard in his empty mouth. "But uncle, you and Musu always seemed happy." "We do not seem happy. We are happy. Happiness, my nephew, is a choice a man makes, a decision he takes, a path he travels. It has nothing to do with his situation," Madah said. "So, how do I choose happiness in my terrible situation?" Gikatoe asked. "That will be a question for another day. Today, permit me to tell you about the secret I have uncovered about marriage. Or should I say a good marriage?" He again raised his head and looked at his nephew, twisting and turning uncomfortably in his seat. He continued, "I want you to remember this. A good marriage is a game of average. I give you 3 reasons why I say so. Reason number 1, know the individual numbers that make up an average. If you tell someone, give me an average." The first question a reasonable person will ask is, the average of what? To find an average, you must understand the characteristics of the figures involved, how many numbers are involved, and the value of each. A good marriage is like that in that sense. The individual in a good marriage must know themselves to the letter. Reason number 2, each number that combines to form an average will lose its value and take on new. In a good marriage, the individuals also assume a new identity. For example, if 2 and 20 come together to form an average of 11, no one can see or guess the numbers that became that average. The average 11 is different by miles from the 2 numbers that are aggregate into it. No one can also tell which of the 2 numbers contributed more to this average of 11. The only thing that matters now is the 2 numbers have been transformed into a new value. And thirdly, the 2 numbers must be divided by a common divisor. Without a common divisor, there will be no average. In the same way, if individuals in a marriage cannot find a common divisor, they cannot transform into a soothing novel and unique couple. If that happens, the marriage is doomed to fail. By now, Gikatoe was shaking in his chair. He did not know where Uncle Madah was going with this advice. He wanted to speak, but could not find his voice. As he gathered all the courage to ask his final question, Uncle Madah interrupted him. "I want you to know this also. You are the head of that home, and so you are in the position to judge and criticize everything your wife does. Do me a favor before you embark on this all-important journey. Go home and give this sheet of paper to Eshetu. Say to her, 'My uncle asks you to write down all my faults in it. I shall come to your house, and together we will reveal it.'" Gikatoe did as his uncle had instructed and waited with an anxious heart for his wife's comment. He guessed and debated to himself all the derogatory things she would write against him. He found rebuttals and excuses for his perceived shortcomings. At the end of the second day, while his wife was asleep, he sneaked into the room and read what she had written. "Dear Uncle Madah, I have thought about all the things Gikatoe had done against me. I searched my head for days, but I found nothing that warranted reporting. Instead, I can only tell you about his good and wonderful deeds. Uncle Madah, this sheet is not enough to talk about his good deeds to me and our child." Gikatoe could not believe his wife, given the opportunity, did not mention a single deed he had done against her. He put the paper down and lay beside his wife. In the dark, he decided no other woman was better than Eshetu. And so, he purposed to live with her, forever and ever, come what may. Thanks for watching. If you're eager for more thrilling short stories, click that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to be the first to dive into our next exhilarating adventure.